What does that say?
Laughter House!
That sounds awesome. I love to laugh.
It's a slaughterhouse.
Look at all this deliciousness. They want this.
Diarrhea!
Dirty, dirty, dirty.
I parked the car!
Let's have no one do that again.
Hey, listen. You didn't need to post that.
I like the optics.
Oh, we love the optics.
What are optics? I think it's a kind of seafood.
Look how they mess with my boy.
Why? Why did you post it? It's too late now to delete it. Now we just have to live with it.
To think, there was a time I was genuinely quite excited about the prospect of an Animal Farm adaptation directed by Andy Serkis. Now, I need to make things quite clear. This is not a video slandering Andy Serkis and Angel Studios. Andy Serkis is a very talented actor and has shown to be a man who, through his Jungle Book adaptation, is a man capable of understanding the source material of films that he's making. And Andy Serkis has revolutionized motion capture technology. Many people have very fond memories of his many roles, such as the iconic Gollum, and lesser known roles like that king from Heavenly Sword.
Kill her.
And Screwtape in the audio drama of the Screwtape letters. Angel Studios is a unique company working within Hollywood that has managed to gather my attention throughout the many years I've been running this channel. I've had positive things to say about contributions by Angel Studios with the likes of their Chosen series, as well as their movie Sound of Freedom. Clearly, Andy Serkis and Angel Studios have proven themselves to be dignified artists who are willing to make genuinely fantastic forms of entertainment. In the case of the 2026 adaptation of Animal Farm, to say it left a lot to be desired is a massive understatement.
Brace yourself.
You know what? I'm not even gonna go bother seeing this Animal Farm movie.
Oh no. Anyway,
I'm going to do what I did in my emoji movie review that I did years ago, that I'm not even gonna go bother seeing the awful movie in question. I'm just going to review this movie just solely based on the sheer baffling execution of how this adaptation was made. Just like with how I reviewed in the Emoji Movie by how bafflingly bad it presented itself to be in the first place. Because from what I've heard from some of the most beloved critics online, with Nostalgia Critic, the Cinema Snub, Jeremy Jans, and Critical Drinker, this adaptation of Animal Farm is bad. Really, really bad. And the whole world has to answer right now just to tell you once again who's bad.
It carries the title of George Orwell's Animal Farm, though is its own Animal Farm. George Orwell's Animal Farm was a telling of, an allegory of, the Russian Revolution, Stalin, communism. This Animal Farm has the same characters as George Orwell's Animal Farm, but is an allegory on capitalism this time around. Thing is though, it's not just that they changed George Orwell's work, it's awful on many reasons. The animation's meh, the humor falls flat, it lacks nuance, it has no teeth, it's a very surface level look at what it's trying to do.
Let us discuss the concept of death of the author. I do believe that Andy Serkis is pushing that concept to its limits with his very unique take on Animal Farm, which, reimagines George Orwell's satirical critique of totalitarian communism and Stalin's cult of personality as a wacky contemporary animated comedy starring Seth Rogen.
I knew something was up when I heard Seth Rogen was playing Napoleon. That's pretty much saying Seth Rogen plays Stalin. In Animal Farm, he's described as having very few words, but having a presence, a stature to him.
And as soon as they released the little clip of it, which is, Seth Rogen as Napoleon, which is already not a great choice. Suddenly the Mario Galaxy movie is looking a lot better, isn't it?
Yeah, this makes Class of 1984 look like a great George Orwell adaptation.
I mean, seriously, Making a story as dramatically serious as George Orwell's Animal Farm and making it into a very kiddish fart humor comedy movie. That's like trying to make a slapstick comedy movie out of Schindler's List.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
It completely misses the point of the cautionary warning that the original source material had to say.
Fools! Idiots! Imbeciles!
Now, some hypothetical people watching this video might say, oh, but Callum, times have long passed since George Orwell's time. George Orwell was talking against communism, but times have changed. The people at Hollywood need to critique capitalism. To which I would respond, ah yes, an anti-capitalist message from the most capitalist location on the planet, Hollywood. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty to critique about the evils of capitalism. But if you really wanted to make an anti-capitalist statement with a story structure that was pretty much similar to Animal Farm, then why not just make a brand new story inspired by Animal Farm and just make a whole new story from that story structure to critique capitalism, instead of butchering George Orwell's cautionary tale? Shut up!
We've got to have money.
I mean, just so obvious this is not going to be good. Let's just throw up our hands and say, you know what, this is going to be this year's War of the Worlds. You know what I mean, with Ice Cube. Just be like, yeah, okay, let's just go in with that mindset. And at times that worked. Other times, even going in with that mindset, this movie can be so dull and stupid and dumb and irritating and just like so frustratingly awful.
It was when Napoleon was going up against Snowball for basically leadership of the farm, and Napoleon starts insulting Snowball, like, yeah, Snowball's boring, and everyone starts laughing at Snowball. I was like, this isn't in the book, this is more like American policy. Oh, I gotcha. And from there, it doesn't really stop, but also doesn't really make sense. Should have leaned into a more depressing ending that illustrated that the little pig, idealistic as he is right now, might end up being the next Napoleon. That's right, aging is understanding where Benjamin is coming from. But it's some fanfic hubris with the energy of cool story and all, but I'm gonna alter it and make it better.
Now, some of you are in the dark as to what Animal Farm is all about, so let me give you a brief plot synopsis as to what Animal Farm is really about, so you can understand the magnitude of how stupid this particular adaptation is. To start off with, George Orwell intended Animal Farm to be a satirical critique of communism and Stalinism, with all of Stalin's corruptive charisma. Keep that in mind. The story of Animal Farm tells the story of the events that happens in this farm that's known as Manor Farm, where the animals there are being horrendously abused by a farmer named Jones. The abuse gets so horrendous that the animals eventually team up against him and force him out of the farm. Once the animals take over the farm, Snowball takes over as the reliable leader of the animals and guides them on farming well and establishes the rules of Animal Farm so that they can all live in harmony. However, another pig named Napoleon gets jealous of Snowball's rule and manipulates dogs to chase away Snowball away from the farm and takes over control of Animal Farm, accusing Snowball of being a traitor who would bring Jones back. Napoleon takes on the role of leadership and gets the animals to overwork on what was otherwise Snowball's ideas for Animal Farm's future. Napoleon manipulates the animals to overwork whilst he and the other pigs rise in power, as well as the laziness of their comforts, and the double standards and the literal rewriting of the rules they keep coming up with. Napoleon's rulership over the other animals and Napoleon's growing popularity with other humans gradually reaches to such an abusive extent that the other animals begin to genuinely suffer under Napoleon's rule, and Napoleon essentially becomes far worse than Jones ever was. Napoleon becomes indistinguishable from other humans, and he intends to spread that abuse of power across the farmlands. Editor's side note: the moral of the story presents a clear cautionary critique of the dangers of totalitarian communism. At first, this political promise of equality appears idealistic and appealing. However, once put into practice, the system is gradually corrupted as those in power manipulate it to surveil society and justify inequality under the guise of actual equality. This is ultimately expressed in the story's slogan, "All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others," quite possibly George Orwell's most genius one-liner. Orwell's critique in Animal Farm is not directed at socialism in principle, but at its transformation into a totalitarian system in which power becomes centralized, dissent is eliminated, and revolutionary ideals are replaced by authoritarian rule.
There are traitors among us. Who else is guilty? Stand up and confess!
Even if our current research does not conclusively prove that all possible versions of communism would necessarily produce the same deadly outcomes, the historical track record of communist regimes is troubling and raises serious concerns about how such systems operate in practice. So in layman's terms, according to George Orwell, totalitarian communism does not end tyranny. It just replaces one form of tyranny with an even worse form of tyranny. Look at the communist leaders Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, and Lenin. Those four leaders, in the name of communism, killed so many people in their regime, in their structure, causing so much of a bloodbath. It makes the Holocaust look tame by comparison. If our education system is willing to go out of our way to warn us about the horrors of the Holocaust, how much more does our education system need to warn us about the horrors of the communist regime of the 20th century? That is how dangerous it is. And George Orwell has every right to warn us about that. But nope, why bother with that understandable caution when you can just have goofy fart humor that completely misses the point of the original source material? Pathetic clown show. And here's what makes it even worse. Even if you don't understand that context, from what I understand, the 2026 Animal Farm is still just an awful movie, even when you don't understand the source material. It's just bad. But if you understand the source material, it gets even worse. Seriously, whose idea was it to cast Seth Rogen as Napoleon? Seth Rogen! That's like if you were to cast James Corden in a 1984 adaptation and say, hey, complete totalitarianism is kind of an okay thing if we just work together. I've heard it said that this 2026 version of Animal Farm is essentially the kind of film that Napoleon the Pig would make to prop himself up to the other farms. In that sense, this film is about as Orwellian as it gets.
Strange, isn't it?
What's the most ironic about the situation? There was a faithful adaptation of Animal Farm, okay, mostly faithful adaptation of Animal Farm, made in the 1950s, made from government propaganda.
What?
Yeah, you heard me correctly. Government propaganda was able to understand the intention of George Orwell better than the silly Hollywood clown show.
What?
That should tell you something. Orwell was writing against corrupt governments and governmental propaganda. Animal Farm tells such a timeless story about the caution, about people who are willing to manipulate power to replace one form of tyranny with another. A cautionary message that informs us that no matter how prosperous certain individuals present themselves, there will always be jerks who want more power.
It was a straight up critique of Stalinism and the authoritarianist dictatorships of the time, but more than that, it was a critique of the political ideals that brought them into existence in the first place. No matter how noble your intentions and no matter how much you might promise freedom and equality, the cycle of revolution, corruption and exploitation keeps repeating. There's always going to be some arsehole who wants more. More money, more resources, more power. And he's willing to break, exploit or just straight up rewrite the rules to get what he wants.
This is precisely why people need to read books and study history in context. You want to know something sad? My friend Brooks the Squid Bear was telling me that maybe, just maybe, the people making this 2026 adaptation are going to do a bit of a bait and switch to subvert our expectations. Kind of like how the first season of Invincible did, you know, where it starts off looking like it's going to be one thing, but then something completely brutal happens. You know, something akin to Made in Abyss, if you get what I mean. But nope, this adaptation couldn't even give us the courtesy of doing that. As a result, you get this absolute fart humor farce that's going to age like sour milk.
If you'd done your job, known your place, we'd all be fine right now.
No, I'm not even gonna go bother seeing this movie. This is a waste of time. Just end the video. ScotsThinker signing out. Don't watch this movie. Just read the book.
That's all, folks.